In Lesson 110, we're going to learn about the United States customary units of length. You will need a whiteboard marker, and eraser. We've been working on subtraction, so what I'm going to ask of you is to go ahead and solve numbers 1, 2, and 3. If you need to, go ahead and write out the problems on your whiteboard. And then go ahead, pause the video, and solve. Number 1, you're going to go ahead and borrow from the 4. The answer is 17. Number 2 is 15. And number 3 is 45. Do the same thing for the next 3 problems. Go ahead and write the problem vertically like this so that you can go ahead and subtract and borrow when needed. Once you have those written on your whiteboard, hit pause, solve, and then check your answers. 6 minus 1 is 5. 12 minus 8 is 4, 45. Next one I'm going to borrow. 12 minus 7 is 5. 8 minus 4 is 4. Bring down your 3. 13 minus 8 is 5. 13 minus 9 is 4. Bring down your 5. And last 3 problems. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Again, write them so that you can subtract. Don't try to borrow from over here and get your answer there. I think it's too easy to make mistakes. Once you have all 3 of those written down, go ahead, solve. Make sure you pause the video. 15 minus 9 is 6. 13 minus 9 is 4, 46. 3 minus 0 is 3. Cannot take 7 from 6. 16 minus 7 is 9. 4 minus 3 is 1. And lastly, 551. Go ahead and wipe off your whiteboard, and we are going to look at journal page 24. Journal page 24. At the very top, you see of your math journal, you see conversion of yards to feet and feet to inches. So a couple things to keep in mind as we're working here is that just try to remember that 3 feet equals 1 yard. I know when my mom sews, if you have a grandparent who sews, they often buy fabric by the yard. We also might have yardsticks in our house that we use to measure things. And we also need to know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. And most of us have a ruler that is 12 inches in length. So when we look at the first chart here, it's asking us to convert. So we can do one of 2 things. We can, if we're moving from feet to inches, we're going to use this particular measurement scale. So we can go to 1 foot, and know straight down would be 12 inches. Then I can go to 2 and look straight down. How many inches? 24. You can do the same thing with 3. Look straight down. How many inches? 36. And do that for 5 as well. Look straight down here. We get 60. Sometimes we might not have that measurement scale there. So whenever we move from feet to inches, we're going to multiply by the number 12. Just remember, when you are learning your multiplication facts, don't just learn them through 10 times 10, but learn the 11s and the 12s as well. Let's move on to number 2. 2 is now converting yards to feet. So we are going to use this top measurement scale. 1 yard, so we go to 1 yard at the top. We look what is below, 3 feet. 2 yards, go to 2 yards. What do we see below? 6 feet. At 4 yards, you'll notice it doesn't go that far. But I know something. I remember that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. So if I take the number of yards, whatever this is, and multiply it by 3, I'll figure out what the missing number is for our chart. So if I have 4 yards, I'm going to multiply it by 3, and 4 times 3 is 12. Remember, you have a multiplication chart in your aqua colored everyday math game mats folder if you do not have those memorized yet. And lastly, 5 yards times 3 feet in a yard. 5 times 3 is 15. So when I'm converting from yards to feet in this input-output chart, I'm just going to multiply the number by 3. Let's take a look at number 3. We're moving from feet to inches, so we have to look, and we're going to use this particular measurement scale. Remember that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So let's take a look at what we can use on this measurement scale. So we're looking at 7 feet. Here's 7 feet. We look straight down. What do we get? We get 84 inches. Now let's go to 9. I find 9 feet. I look straight below that, directly below that. I get 108. So here's a little reminder. When you're moving from feet to inches, you're going to multiply by 12. That's one of the reasons that we want you to learn your 12s. Now, if we're going the opposite direction, what is the opposite or inverse operation of multiplying by 12? The inverse or opposite is dividing by 12. So I'm going to go ahead and skip the next one for just a minute. Now imagine if I had 20 feet, it would be way, way out there. But I know that if I take and multiply 20 feet times 12, 12 inches in a foot, think of what is 2 times 12? Or what is 12 doubled? 12 times 2 is 24, and then I take and add this 0 on the end to get 240. If we had to have a measurement scale that went all the way to 20, I wouldn't have an iPad long enough, or it'd have to be so small you could barely read it. Now we're going to go back to inches to feet. So instead of multiplying by 12, I'm moving the opposite direction. So I'm going to divide by 12. So we'll learn this later, but if you think of this, ignore the 0 for just a moment. If I had 12 pieces of candy and I gave them to 12 friends, how many pieces of candy would each child get? 12 divided by 12 is 1. Then we say, okay, how many zeros did we ignore? 1. We add that on the end. The answer there would be 10. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, we're moving from, we are moving from yards to feet. Remember, there are 3 feet in 1 yard. So if I'm moving from yards to feet, I'm going to multiply by 3. And remember, the inverse is the same. I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying, or the inverse of multiplying by 3. I'm going to divide by 3. So let's start with 7 yards. I don't have 7 yards. So I know that when I move from yards to feet, I'm going to multiply by 3. So if you need a multiplication chart, make sure it's right next to you when you're working today. So I'm going to start with 7 yards times, I know there's 3 feet in a yard. So if it helps, actually write that really small in there. 7 times 3 is 21. I'm going to skip the next one just for a moment. I'm going to move down to 10 yards. I know there's 3 feet in a yard, so I have to multiply that number by 3. 10 times 3 is 30. And lastly, multiply 20 by 3. Think of it as 2 times 3, which is 6, and add your 0 on the end. Now let's go ahead and go back to the one we skipped. Instead of multiplying by 3, I'm going to divide by 3. So if you need some help, ask an adult how to read your multiplication chart as a way of dividing as well. 27 divided by 3 is 9. One last problem that we'll do on this page. Number 5, solve the problem, complete the measurement scale to convert. An Andean condor is about 4 feet tall. A raven is about 2 feet tall. What is the combined height of the two birds in inches? Combined means to add. So what we need to do is, why don't we go ahead and first fill out our measurement scale. If we're moving, remember, from feet to inches, there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So if we count up by 12s, we want to say 24, count up by 12, or multiply by 12. 36. Look at your multiplication chart. Look across the 12s. What is the next one? What's 12 times 4? 48. What is 12 times 5? 60. And lastly, 12 times 6 is? Use that multiplication chart if you don't know those yet. Now what we want to do is we want to combine the height of both of those. So the condor is 4 feet, the raven is 2 feet. If I add those two up together, 4 plus 2 is 6. I look at 6 feet and say, how many inches is that? 72. Go ahead and look back in your Schoology folder and see what you need to work on next.